Hi, welcome. The purpose of this video is to teach you about the Parchment editor and how to use it. So if you already know LaTeX and you want to learn how to use the Parchment editor, you're in the right place. If you don't know how to use LaTeX, you're still in the right place. We recommend you watch this video first, which will teach you how to use the Parchment editor. And then after that, watch a second video, which will teach you how to write LaTeX and the syntax of LaTeX and the nitty-gritty of writing LaTeX. But for now, you're in the right place. So before we start, a couple things to note. Parchment is in beta, so because of that, you will experience bugs. We're working on fixing them, and we'll continue to fix them in in the coming weeks and months. We're confident that most of these bugs will be minor annoyances to you, but still, just be aware. And the second thing to note is that Parchment works best in Google Chrome. So we recommend use that browser when using Parchment. It has support for other browsers also, but we've found that there's the least amount of bugs and the best performance in Google Chrome. And with that out of the way, let's do a basic tour of the editor. So here I have my doc. I can write some text here. Actually, I should kind of write just because, we're using this for CSE 311 computer science class. Um, and so we have a toolbar which can do a bunch of different things. You can read about what each button in the toolbar does in our documentation page, which I'll talk about later. But for the sake of time, I'm only going to cover two parts of our toolbar. The first is the save button right here. Press that, it saves the document to the cloud. And this button is really important. We really want you to save your documents often. Uh, we don't have auto save implemented yet, and so you'll have to remember to save your documents. Um, it really will prevent some weird things from happening. Let's say your document gets into a really weird state and you have to refresh the page, but you haven't saved, you'll lose your changes. And so we really, really recommend you save your changes often. And the second and the most important part of this editor is this LaTeX drop-down menu here. So this allows you to write LaTeX in the editor. Uh, all four of these buttons insert LaTeX blocks or paragraphs where your cursor is. So what I mean by that is if I'm here and I press, say, a dynamic LaTeX block, it'll insert that dynamic LaTeX block at my cursor. Once it's inserted, I can't really change the type of this block. So I can't kind of like click a vanilla or, click a centerline paragraph. Like once I'm in, I'm in. These blocks are basically immutable, and these buttons only work to insert these things at a specific point, not to change existing things. So with that out of the way, let's cover what a dynamic LaTeX block does. So let's say I insert a dynamic LaTeX block here. You can see I'm immediately put into this little blue box, and this allows me to write LaTeX. But the cool thing about dynamic LaTeX blocks is it allows me to write LaTeX really fast. I can write a summation just by writing /sum. If I press space, it renders. Then I can write my n equals 0. I can press tab to move to the top. I can do my infty for infinity. Press space to render that. Press tab to move here and squared. And I can just press enter to move out of this. So this is a really, really fast, intuitive way to write LaTeX. I can also arrow left to get back into it. I can enter or arrow right to get out of it. I can also click around it, click out of it. Pretty much what you would expect. The second way I can write LaTeX is vanilla LaTeX. I can write a vanilla LaTeX block. And so I can do that by clicking this vanilla button. And here, you're basically going to be writing the standard LaTeX code. So I would write sum. You can see the color, font, and background is different to represent the fact that I'm writing actual LaTeX code. Sum n equals 0. Oops. And then up top, I'll have my infty and square. I can arrow right to get out of this, and boom. The same thing's rendered, but I had to write the entire thing. Important thing to note, if I'm here in my vanilla LaTeX block and I enter, it's actually going to insert a new line. So I kind of have to click out of it or arrow out of it. Whereas in the dynamic LaTeX, if I just enter anywhere and pop out of it. Uh, so these two buttons kind of represent writing inline LaTeX, right? We use these to write LaTeX interspersed with text, you know, which you would do a lot on your assignments. And one more thing I want to talk about with respect to dynamic and vanilla LaTeX is that sometimes dynamic LaTeX doesn't support everything that vanilla does. So for example, if I'm writing a black square, which you might want to write for the end of your proofs, in dynamic LaTeX, if I press enter, it just kind of does this weird thing where it just renders a text. And if I press enter again, it doesn't do anything. But in vanilla LaTeX, everything works great. So just something to be aware of. Okay, so we've covered writing LaTeX inline, i.e. LaTeX interspersed with text, like so. We covered dynamic and vanilla. Um, but let's cover something more complicated. So oftentimes you will want to write large chunks of LaTeX contiguously. And so for that, we have other features here. Whoops. Other features here called LaTeX paragraphs. So I'll click on the first one, the center line paragraph. So basically, this allows you to write large chunks of LaTeX contiguously. If I write a bunch of LaTeX here and I get out of this, you can see this is a bunch of LaTeX and it's rendered. And so the vanilla and dynamic LaTeX blocks are for smaller chunks of LaTeX. This is for a lot bigger ones. So this statement's kind of useless. Let's write something useful. Let's say I want to write two summations separated by a bunch of new lines. So I could write, sum n equals 0, just like before. Line of ty n squared, whoops, n squared. I could write my new lines. And the nice thing about LaTeX paragraphs is that you can actually write, in addition to writing in this vanilla environment, you can also write dynamic LaTeX in them. So I can actually insert a dynamic LaTeX block here and write just like before. And if I pop out of this, it'll actually render the code, the LaTeX code, since I'm in this paragraph environment. And if I pop out of that, I have my two summations. Probably want, I think you need 3 lines for each of these to get them to work properly. And there we go, 2 summations. And so this isn't particularly useful, but when we start getting into LaTeX environments, right, which is basically LaTeX constructs with a begin in the beginning of them, that's when this stuff gets really useful. So for example, if I wanted to write a table, I would write, a new, LaTeX paragraph, and I would write my begin statement with my align. And let's say you don't remember exactly how to do this. That's okay. You can go to the Parchmynt documentation page, and we basically list all of the constructs that you would ever possibly need for your homework, along with a bunch of shortcuts for everything that we've talked about so far, the other buttons that I talked about that I didn't really cover at the beginning of the video, etc. I wanted to write a table. I could go here. I could copy this. And I wrote a line, but I meant to write array. Paste this, and boom, now I have a table. And so this is where LaTeX starts getting really powerful and Parchmynt starts getting really powerful. You can basically write these, complicated constructs in these LaTeX paragraphs. I can put, dynamic LaTeX anywhere here, wherever I wanted to, and it would render the same. Let's say I'm missing like a bracket or something and my syntax is off. If I get out of this, you'll see it's red. I can hover over it and see that there's an unexpected end of input in a macro argument, expected this closing bracket at the end of input. And after some investigation, I can figure out that Whoops, I'm missing my bracket. So that was the primary purpose of LaTeX paragraphs, um, just writing large chunks of contiguous LaTeX. There is a secondary purpose. Basically, if I had a bunch of, text here, and instead of writing these, inline summations, I wanted to write a nice, big, beautiful summation in the middle of this text. I could do that with like a center aligned logic paragraph. So I could, put a dynamic block here, write my summation, and now I have this big, beautiful summation in the middle of my text. So that's also a secondary purpose of LaTeX paragraphs. But in general, it's for, large contiguous chunks of LaTeX. So those are the basics of the editor. I now want to get into just some small little weirdnesses with the editor that you should be aware of when you're using it. Okay, so let's say I am writing in a dynamic logic block, and I write in a dynamic logic block, and then I write some more in a dynamic logic block, and then I undo. The entire logic block disappears, and if I redo, I can't get it back. So that's super weird, right? So the reason this is happening is that our editor doesn't really save the state of the editor when you're in dynamic LaTeX. You have to get out of that dynamic LaTeX block in order to save the state. So what I mean by that is if I'm in my dynamic LaTeX block and I write some text, the state is not saved. As soon as I get out of it, the state is saved. And now, if I go back into the dynamic LaTeX block and write some more text, like a summation, I'm just going to write random stuff here and get out of it, that state is saved again. So now we have two saved states. So now if I undo, it'll go back to the previously saved state. It'll go back one more to the previously saved state before that. And if I redo, it'll come back. So just something to note. Again, state is not saved in dynamic LaTeX, so your undo redos won't work as you would expect. Just get out of the dynamic LaTeX before you decide to undo or redo. So that's one. The second is that LaTeX paragraphs cannot span multiple pages. So if I go here, let me just enter all the way to the bottom here, and I have a LaTeX paragraph. Let's say I copy a table here, put a new line, another table, and some new line. You'll see this error that basically says your LaTeX paragraph is too long. Make sure the paragraph is only on one page. And so it's really important that you make sure that the paragraph is only on part of one page. Even if I click out of this and it's now not part of one page anymore, you want to make sure that both in this rendered state and in this editing state, it's not in one. It's only on one page. And so, if I do this, now it's also, again, it's now bad both ways, but it should be bad 0 ways, not rendered or editing. And you might be thinking, what's the big deal? So things can get really messy and weird when you have text below, for example. So let me show you what happens. You get the error, okay, fine. But then the editor starts, looking like this, and you just get some really weird things. You can get it in the middle of the text. And so if I click here, it's just all messed up. And so when you see these errors, it'll show you the red box as quickly as possible. It'll show you the red box on the page that's having the error. Hopefully it's not on multiple, but if it is, it'll show you multiple pages. And you want to fix these errors from the top down as quickly as possible. And so, let me fix this error here. I'll just, get out of here and delete. And if I want to push this table to the next page, I can just continually enter until it's all on one page. There should never be the case where a LaTeX paragraph is so big that it's spanning multiple pages. If you have a lot of stuff you want to be in a single LaTeX paragraph, just split it up. So I can, just delete this stuff and then make another LaTeX paragraph here. uh, and that'll do the same thing. Um, so that's the second thing. And the third thing is that we do coalesce both blocks and paragraphs. So what that means is if I have a dynamic logic block here and I have another dynamic logic block here, if I delete the text in between, it's hard to see, but yeah, the text in between these two dynamic logic blocks, if I delete it to the point where there's nothing between those two dynamic logic blocks, our compiler will actually combine those blocks, and that's by design. So if I do this and do this one more time, oh, I'm missing the K here. There we go. The blocks get combined. So don't be alarmed by that. Just be aware of it. That's how we've designed it. Same thing with paragraphs. Right now, there's some text in between this logic paragraph and this logic paragraph. If I were to get rid of this text entirely, okay, if I was to get rid of this text entirely, I think oh, it's because of this stuff. There we go. Since I got rid of that text entirely, the two paragraphs combined. And so I can just, undo this to undo it, but just something to be aware of. So if you notice anything getting super weird with any of the issues that I mentioned earlier, then just refresh the page and your document will revert to the last saved document, but the editor should reset and you should be fine. But that's a good transition into support. So we do have bugs, as I mentioned earlier. I'll give you a super quick example right now. Oh, my editor was here. The cursor was here. If I have a little bit of text and I select, this selects as you would expect. If I have some more text here, then this selects the text at the bottom also, but it doesn't actually select the text in between, the new lines in between. And so that's an example of a small bug that, we're working on fixing. We just haven't had the time, and we will fix it in the next little bit here. But if you find a bug that, or if you find any bug, please go to our support page. This is here, and you can file bugs with us. If there's any urgent issues with the editor, just follow the instructions here and we will get back to you much faster. Otherwise, we'll try to do our best to respond within 1 to 2 days and get your issues resolved. Yeah, but anyway, thank you so much for listening. We hope you use Parchment, and we truly believe that using this LaTeX editor will save you a lot of time so you can get your homework done faster and spend more time doing things you like reading a book, going outside, or hanging out with your friends. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.